Hey everybody, and welcome back to Critical Crafting. This is Dylan, your crafting DM here. Today I am super excited to share with you guys how to make your very own bounty board or wanted poster board. So a lot of people, when you're running your games, you've got your bounty boards, your quest boards, and I want to show you a way that you can not only put these directly into your games, but have a matching bounty notice that you hand out to your players. So I'm really excited about it. Without further ado, let's get crafting. So there are a lot of different sites that you can use for this, for wanted poster generation, but I like this, Tookspeed.com, and I'll put a link in the description for everybody, as well as some templates and formats and stuff on my website, just so it's easy for you guys to get access to everything. So on this site, the first thing you want to look at is this choose file. So I'm going to be using all stuff from my upcoming Patreon. And the first character I want to add into my wanted poster is Old Chap Ettercap. But you can see right off the bat, he's really, really small because it's a full image of him, right? So most computers will have some kind of a snipping tool so that I can go in and say, okay, here's Old Chap, and I'm just going to use my capture or my snipping tool, and I'm going to crop him down so it's just like a portrait of him. And then save that into those downloads so that I can have just the portrait. And most stuff too, if you don't have a snipping tool, you almost definitely have some kind of a crop tool that you can use to just crop whatever image it is down. I can go back into my wanted poster. I say, yep, that's the one I want. And boom. Already that looks a lot better, right? But maybe, wanted, dead or alive, Trigger Finger McGee. That's not exactly what we want. We don't want like a dollar symbol and all that. So what I'm going to do is, since this is Old Chap and he is a purveyor of magic items, I think he's wanted for tax evasion. Oh, yes, money. And then we'll make his name Old Chap Ettercap. And instead of a $1,000 reward, we're going to change that to 10,000 gold pieces. Wanted for tax evasion.
Oh, you'll never take me alive.
10,000 gold pieces. And then we'll just hit save here. So the next step you can do with Photoshop, but since not a lot of people have that, I'm just going to use Word. All we're going to do is take our latest and greatest piece there and drop it in. So you can see right off the bat, this is really, really big, right? And actually, I'm going to go ahead and leave it big and size it up because I can then print a big version of this and I'll cut it out and hand it to my players. And then when they look on the actual tabletop, there'll be a miniature version that their character's looking at. And I really love that sort of immersion. So we'll copy this guy, we'll paste him in. And then what I'm going to do is right click on it and go to size and position. And I'm going to change the size here to 0.85 inches, which should be just big enough that your players can kind of see it and it's appropriately scaled for tabletop use. A few other things to note with this site is that you can include stuff that has a background. So here's another image from the Patreon, and it's got that background on it. It's better if you use an image that does not have a background, so a PNG file is probably better for this. But if you want to, you can put something in there that has that sort of border on it. And I'll show kind of a bonus using Photoshop to enhance these some, especially if it's something that has a background. So if you have Photoshop and you're like, yes, I want to use an image and I want to have a background on there, you can just crop it down in Photoshop so we're at that portrait again, just like when we used the snipping tool before. And then obviously we'll get rid of this background layer. We use the eraser tool and then use some kind of like a foggy or a smoky brush. And we can go into the image and get rid of that hard edge so that when we throw it into that auto generator, it won't look like it has this rectangular edge on it, right? So we're gonna export this as a PNG, and then what we can do is jump in here, choose that file, and already, I mean, that looks loads better. You could do a little bit of extra work on this, you know, if you want to go in and say, all right, I'm gonna change my brush, so I take my opacity down some, and then, you know, maybe I'll feather the edge a little bit or something. There's tons that you can do with Photoshop to change this up. Real nice. So this does convert everything to like a grayscale, which is something to note, but that looks really good. And obviously, you know, this guy probably is not wanted for tax evasion.
What else could you be wanted for?
For priest evisceration, there's a good one. See, I've even used it before. And we'll call him Vlad the Terror. Because, get it? He's torn the... Alright, there's my dad joke for the day. And just hit update. There you go. A nice new wanted poster. But you might be looking at this and saying, you know what? I don't want it to say wanted. Maybe you have another character and you want it to say missing. Let's say you have this adorable zombie goldfish from the Patreon, right? And you're like, he's the pet, you know, this is the pet of the party, and the party necromancer, he's missing, we gotta go find him, kind of thing. So you don't want wanted, you know, the zombie goldfish. His name is gonna be Bubbles. Okay, but it's wanted. We don't want it to say wanted, right? So if you have a program like Photoshop, we can go ahead and update this a little bit. And we gotta get rid of this wanted, right? So what I'm going to do is go over here and I'm going to use the clone stamp tool. Hit Alt to select a part of the background, preferably away from most stuff. And I'm going to make sure that I have, a nice soft brush. You're basically going to be hitting Alt and selecting areas that will help this to blend in. So Alt, click, and then painting. You can see basically wherever that little crosshair is, it picks the stuff up. So with something like this, it can be a little bit difficult, but it's going to be so small, even if it doesn't look great, nobody is going to notice when it's shrunken way down and put onto our wanted notice board. All right, so we got rid of wanted, right? What I normally do then is I'll go in and use a font like Carta Marina, this sort of old piratey font, and then scale that way up and put in here missing beloved pet. We'll go ahead, center it, move it on over. You'll notice that's all in black, so what I'll do is hit the eyedropper tool here and then just convert all of this. Nobody really is going to notice. Even if this is black, as long as you stay in a darker reddish tone, nobody's going to know. One other thing you can do is take your text, and if you hit Control T, you can transform it and make it a little bit bigger, smaller. If you hit Shift, then you can stretch it to maybe fit a little bit better. You know, anything that makes it feel like it fits a little more will be handy. So once we have everything in here that we want to print out, normally I like to do about 3 wanted posters per bounty board, and I'm gonna go ahead and print these out. So now I've got my one really big wanted poster, and I'm just gonna take a pair of scissors and cut all the border off there. I could also, you know, burn through some of the marks in the middle if I really want it to look good, but that's not entirely necessary. Same sort of a deal for the smaller wanted posters. I'm just taking my scissors and cutting each of them out. What I also like to do is vary them up a little bit. So instead of all of them having exactly the same edge, I'll take my scissors and chop a little bit off, or I'll take small little sections out. Kind of like when you're cutting a snowflake and you cut that little segment out just to make it feel aged and unique. The next step is building the actual bounty board. So I like using craft sticks, and then I'll just take a pair of pliers or something that has a slightly sharp edge and break them into roughly 1 to 2 inches long. Normally for the front of the board, I stack them about 5 or 6 tall, and that'll take about 10 to 12 of these 1 to 2 inch long segments. Once those are cut out, I whip out my handy dandy hot glue gun and start gluing things together. I like to put a little glue on the side and glue the pieces so that I have 2 right next to each other, and then kind of just stack from there. I think that this gives it a little bit more character than just one long strip, and it feels more like an in-game size. I also like to be sure that mine are actually not lined up square on the edges, so you'll see where some kind of extend out further. I think that gives it a little bit more character, and it feels a little more rugged. Next, I gotta build my supports, so I'll cut my craft sticks down to 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and these are gonna kind of serve as the feet. And I like to make sure that they're the same size, so I'll just hold one up next to the other once I've cut it, and trim them down a bit. Once I've done that, I put my glue onto my board and just stick those onto the back. For added support, I put a little bit of glue on the back of each one, and then just take a piece and stick that on the back as well. Next, I need a little bit extra support, so I'll line something up at an angle and just trim it down so it's going to fit from the top down to the bottom of those feet. Once I've done that, I simply glue that on and do it on both sides, and we've got a beautiful looking little bounty board there. For added security, I like to put one other bar on the top. This also helps to hide some of the back. And then if you've got a lot of goop, you can take a X-Acto knife or something and clean it up a little bit. People aren't really going to see that part, so it's not a huge deal. Now onto the painting. I use a apple barrel brown, a little bit of apple barrel black mixed together, and put a base coat on the whole thing, nice and thick. Once that's done and dry, I take and dry brush on there, normally something like an Army Painter leather brown, and just put that all over the entire piece. My next step is using a lighter brown, maybe a cork brown or something like that, and then just putting it in selective areas to make certain parts of this piece pop. And then, again, with the layers, I'll mix a little bit of white in with that previous lighter brown and emphasize a few other spots on the bounty board. To add a little bit of warmth, I like using something like a yellow ochre or some other yellow to just pop a little bit, so it's not all brown, so we have a little bit of extra color in there. To make a strong bond for these little wanted posters, I'm going to use Mod Podge and just paint it all over the front of this thing, and then just stick each of these guys, maybe overlap them a little bit so that they look really nice, and then I'm going to take the Mod Podge and paint right back over top of all those. A nice thick coat so that everything is just sealed tightly in there. Once that's dried, I like using a little bit of some kind of a brown wash and just paint around these boards a little bit to help and make those posts pop just a little bit more so they're kind of pushed out from the background. And then I'll take a little bit and kind of overlap too so that there's a little bit of aging going on, and that kind of helps to make everything feel blended together. Once that dries, you'll notice that everything has kind of blended in a little bit, but you might have lost some of the contrast from before. So I'll take just a little bit of brown and paint really, kind of detailed around each of the edges of those little posters so that they feel like they're popping out more again. So there you have it, how to create your very own wanted posters or bounty boards for your players, and even, a nice handout that goes along with it. If you like the art that we had on some of those bounty boards, do check out my upcoming Patreon. So it's gonna be a ton of fun. Me and one of my best friends, Cameron DeFord, and my wife Sarah are putting together some really fun 5e content. Everything from monsters to subclasses to magic items, adventures, maps, everything you could possibly want. And we are doing a free giveaway right now. So if you sign up on my website, you will get a free sample PDF that includes some of the stuff that we're doing for this upcoming Patreon. This will help support the channel, and you get some amazing 5e stuff that all comes from my crazy mind and the minds of my awesome compatriots. So I really hope to see you all there. Thank you again for coming on this channel. Love you guys. Thanks for watching Critical Crafting.